And therefore we will say to the Pope, Holy Father, even if we are disobeying you, we are doing this because of love for you, for the Holy See, for the liturgy of all saints, and this will be for you in the hour of your judgment a consolation, because we did not collaborate with your harmful orders.
Hello again, ladies and gentlemen. I am Michael Matt with Remnant TV. We have the very special treat for you today, a great honor for us to spend a few moments with Bishop Athanasius Schneider, who's in the States for a number of conferences, including our conference here at the Catholic Identity Conference in Pittsburgh. Your Excellency, how are you doing?
Thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure for me to meet you and your friends here.
Well, certainly from our point of view, it's a great honor, and I think that people from all over the world who come to this conference, I think we have about 800 this year, they just take such solace in the fact that a bishop will come to them and encourage them in a very difficult time. And I don't want to steal your thunders from your talk tonight, but we've been having a lot of discussions about the proper attitude, especially for the differences between a priest, a bishop, and lay people, the proper attitude with respect to a terrible situation in the church where there's a crisis in the hierarchy, a crisis in leadership. And I wonder if we could just go right for first question today. I know you have enunciated your concerns. For example, in Kazakhstan, you said some things before the Holy Father arrived about the meeting that was to take place there. And I wonder if you could maybe start by explaining what your thinking was as you gave those statements to the press about the possible problems with the visit and the meeting with the Holy Father in Kazakhstan.
It was I considered this my duty of my conscience as a bishop to address an evident serious problem for the integrity of the Catholic faith and the life of the Church, which constitutes such interreligious meetings. And I had to address these, and therefore I did this with this conscience to help the Pope to reflect deeper about this problem, and in the future to correct this. So this was my intention. And as in general, when I as a bishop, I'm seeing and stating an evident danger for the purity of faith, or morals, or liturgy, I have to address this, of course, with due respect, in a respectful form always, and in a supernatural view. And so I told also to the journalists there that we bishops are not simply employees of the Pope. This is not divine structure of the Church, but the bishops are brothers of the Pope. And to do a correction or admonition, it's a fraternal gesture of charity. This is my intention always, to do this as an act of charity towards the Pope.
You will not succeed in overcoming and extinguishing the traditional rite of the Mass. No.
So I saw the headlines, and of course you're not responsible for the headlines that the world press came up with it after that event, where they tried to cast you as a very strong critic of the Holy Fathers. And I think you made a statement at one point how charity calls you to make your voice heard. So could you, for our viewers, what is a good rule of thumb on how we follow our conscience to speak the truth, even to authority, and at the same time not violating Christian charity?
Yes, first we have to know that the Church, we are not a political party, and we are the Church of God here on earth, and the Church of God is a family. And so with an attitude in a family, we have not to be fearful that in the case we raise our voice, we will be punished. This will happen in a dictatorship. When you are in a dictatorship, everyone has fear to raise his voice because the dictator leadership will punish you suddenly. But this should not be an atmosphere in the Church. And the Pope and the Holy See should not give this impression that they will now punish you because you raised your voice, because of your conscience. So we have to have at the same time a supernatural view of the Church. And as you already mentioned, when we will make some corrections or admonitions or appeals, whatever you call these, it should be moved by charity. Otherwise, it is too human and will not bear fruits. Because the Church is not a simple human society. And in the Church, only acts of true supernatural charity will bear fruits. And this matters. What will bear durable fruits for the authentic benefit of the Church. And this should move us always. There is the attitude of the lay people. It's a little bit different of the attitude of the bishops. The bishops are members of the magisterium, of the teaching office of the Church, and are members of the episcopal collegium, and in this way brothers of the Pope in helping him, shepherds together to help to guide the Church. The lay people are also members of the Church, have their dignity and their office also to defend the faith in their way due to the graces of the sacrament of the confirmation. But they have always to keep in mind this respect to the authority. This should be always done with respect. Otherwise, it can degenerate in simple emotions, passions, anger, and so on. And this will not help to nobody. It will always only remain a frustration. And so I would suggest to lay people, yes, you can raise your voice, and please do this. In this tremendous crisis of the Church, you have the right to do this. But do this insistently, of course, clearly, without fear, but always please find forms of respect. So, as St. Paul said this phrase, do the truth with charity. It is easier for human beings to take one of the extremes, only charity, and or I will not speak another because I am only a subordinate, and they will do all in the Church, the Pope and the bishops. Or I have to simply obey blindly. This is not a true attitude of a Catholic. And the other opposite, only the truth without charity, it will harm. It will not convince no one. And therefore, it is not the way of God. The way of God is the synthesis. And this is more difficult. It's easier to shout and to say, let them be accursed, and so on. This is not the way of God, never. But, we have to unite these. And so therefore, try to raise your voice, please. There was a church father, St. Cesarius of Arles, in South France in the 5th century, and he, in his homilies, he spoke once to the lay people, please come to us bishops and demand from us insistently that we will give you the sane, true nourishment of faith. Do not cease to ask us, even if you will hit us. And he made this example of a cow with the calf, which has to come, and the mother cow is not giving milk, and then he comes and with his head he is hitting the cow, and until she will give milk to him. And so this Saint Caesarius said, so you faithful lay people should do. Go to the shepherds, I mean to the bishops, or even to the Pope, and hit him, but the hit of the head it's not hurting, it's not harming, it's only a soft hit. It's not injuring the body of the cow. Mm-hmm. But she's perceiving that she had to give milk. And so the Pope and the bishops, so you can do this, raise your voice and say, we have the right, please, Holy Father, give us the true, pure, integral milk of the Catholic faith, mm-hmm. of Catholic liturgy. We have the right, we are the children of the Church. Please don't lock up these treasures. And please speak clearly and teach us, and so on. In this sense, you can do this.
Mm-hmm. I think during the run-up to the Amazon Synod, you and His Eminence Cardinal Burke had a document, I think it was an 8-page document, warning against certain heretical or these captious propositions within I think it was the working document of the Synod, which I think was very important. How do you... If you're not a Catholic, you're just a news person or a media person in Rome, and you see a cardinal and a bishop raising the possibility of heresy even in the Synod, the Amazon Synod, how do we prevent such needed action as yours from preventing the institution, from harming the institution of the papacy itself in the modern world where people aren't reading all that much, they're not educated? We have to speak, as you say. We have to speak with respect. But we do run the risk of doing damage to the papacy because the world can look at the papacy and say, well, obviously, there's no protection there. It's just a human institution and it can fall into heresy. What's a good approach?
Yes, this is truly a problem which you mentioned, and we have to recognize this. And this is a true, rare case in the entire history of the Church. We have to state this simply. Our current doctrinal moral crisis in the papacy, today it's a crisis of the papacy, of course in the episcopacy, which occurred rarely in that way, in the doctrinal aspect during the 2000 years of the Church. We had crises of the papacy, several, and even very deep crisis, moral, always on the moral way. Mm. In the 10th century, the Saeculum Obscurum, the immoral lifestyle of the popes, of some of the popes of the 10th century, let us say, and of the Renaissance popes, evidently. It was a great scandal, and it was a stain for the papacy, for the Holy See, the chair of Peter, this immorality of several popes. Mm-hmm. But the doctrinal, that a pope is confusing doctrine, it is most grievous than a pope living immorally, his personal life immorally. It is doing greater harm because it is undermining the foundations of the faith itself in the people of God. And so we had only rare cases of this doctrinal confusion which spread, or which came out from the wrong attitude of a pope. The first was in Liberius in the 4th century, in the Arian crisis, where Pope Liberius yielded and accepted and signed an ambiguous formula of faith. It was not a direct heretical formula, thanks be to God, but an ambiguous. But ambiguity always causes confusion. And therefore, Liberius was the first pope in history of the Church who was not canonized. All his predecessors, from St. Peter to him, were canonized, or as martyrs or confessor of faith. And then he also abandoned St. Athanasius and yielded to consent that he will be excommunicated. So, and then the other problem, doctrinal problem we had in the 14th century, so you see it's rare, from the 4th century to the 14th,
Right.
1000 year was no doctrinal problems in the Holy See itself. Moral, yes, moral problems were. It was the Pope John the 22nd who started to spread in his ordinary magisterium, or daily magisterium as we call, in his speeches and homilies, de facto a heresy, saying that the saints and the souls who were purified or after purgatory, or who were already purified here on earth, the saints, they will not have the beatific vision, but only when Christ will come again to the last judgment, and when will God create a new heaven and earth, then only all they will enter and to the beatific vision. This is wrong. Jesus said to the good thief, "Today you will be with me in the paradise." And he spread this idea. And there were people who resisted, but the clergy did not resist because they were fearful to lose their career. And only one cardinal resisted the Pope. One cardinal.
It was mostly lay people that were resisting.
And mostly lay people. And from the lay people who resisted mostly was the King of France. He said, this is a wrong teaching, we cannot accept this. And the Sorbonne University also condemned this. And even it is told, I don't know if it is true, but it is told about the King of France at that time, that he said he would have said that if the Pope will come here to Paris and will not repent from his wrong teaching, he will be burnt as a heretic. I don't know if this was, but
the good old days.
It was. It is said.
Yeah.
And in any case, it is demonstrated that the lay people were concerned about this wrong teaching. How we can imagine that the saints are not with God now, looking, contemplating God. In any case, and thanks be to God, he repented, the Pope, before he died, and retracted his errors, and called the Cardinal College and repented.
Can I interrupt you for a question? When John the 22nd fell into heresy and even preached heresy, did he lose his office?
No.
Temporarily?
No, it was not a formal heresy, because the Church did not yet proclaimed as a dogma of faith that all who are justified will enter into the beatific vision of God immediately. It was not yet proclaimed as a dogma formally. It was in the Holy Scripture, of course, there. And therefore, there is not a question that he was a formal heretic. And to be a formal heretic, it should be a obstination also. This is a concept for someone to be formally declared a heretic, must be obstination.
Remain pertinacious in his heresy.
Pertinacious and after admonitions and so on. And this was not so the case. Paul, maybe he was also obstinate, he refused, but he repented, and so, thanks be to God. And then the cardinal who admonished him was elected his successor, Benedict XII. And he proclaimed formally as a dogma of faith these truths, which his predecessor undermined or denied. So it was a rare case. And the next case we have today. So I see After the 14th century, we have now the 21st century. The same case, even the most grievous case as the previous two cases. And but God will intervene, as He intervened in the last cases also. And we have to do our work to admonish the Pope persistently and to pray for him. I think that it's important for lay people, also for bishops, when they do some admonition, some appeals, or they have to always to accompany these actions with prayers. And not only with prayers, I think also with acts of reparation. Because we are one family, we are one body. When one member is suffering, all the others suffers. When the head is suffering today, it's the head of the church, the visible, which is suffering, which is in some way sick. And then we are feeling all the entire body, our head is passing a sickness, a weakness. And we have to help them. That the blood, supernatural circulation of the graces in the body of the mystical body of Christ will reach these sick parts of the head, which is the Holy See in our day. We have to help them with prayers, with reparations also.
There's a sense in which I know your work, and you've I saw you in Kazakhstan, being very charitable to the Pope, to his face, helping him to see the Kazakhstan peasants and so forth. And that was a wonderful example of, I think, what we're called to do. And I'm curious, because it's also important, just as important, at that very event when he was in Kazakhstan, for you to have said what you said in terms of the dangers of this kind of meeting, which of course, mortalium animos, you had plenty of backing from the constant teaching of the Church to say what you said. But my point is that many people took a lot of solace in the fact that you said what you said, because if no one speaks out, I think there's a temptation to despair and to depression, and to think the Church is gone completely off the rails. So I guess I'm asking, it seems like the work of speaking out is not going to push people out of the Church. If we speak out correctly, as you say, in charity, but with adamacy, I think it helps people keep in the Church, stay in the Church. Is that sort of what your intentions are also?
Of course. We cannot leave the Church. We are in the Church. We are members of the Church. And when the Church is suffering and the Holy See is now to some extent occupied by forces which are damaging the faith, evidently, undermining the faith, occupied. So occupied city. But it is a temporal phenomenon. So therefore we have also to look supernaturally, that the Church is in the hands of God, in the hands of Christ. Even in the most greatest tempest of the sea, when Jesus is in the boat, sleeping but in the boat, and the boat cannot sink, even in the greatest tempest. And these people should have this vision of this indestructibility of the Church. And we have to remain in the Church because we have no other place where to go. And we have not to create another kind of our Church, or a sect or some community independent. This is not Catholic. Catholic is always in union with a Pope and a Bishop. This is Catholic. Even if we have to, regrettably, admonish the Pope or make appeals to him and corrections, he will remain the Pope. And we will continue to pray for him. We will continue even to love him, maybe more, because he is in a pitiful situation. What he has to answer before the judgment of God, imagine. It is frightening what he has to answer for leaving such a chaos in the Church, a confusion. We have to have really pity with his soul and love him, his soul, Pope Francis. Pray for him, do sacrifices for him. that he may be illuminated and recognize the errors which he's committing. Like John the 22nd had a grace to repent before he died. It would be a great grace. We have to implore this for Pope Francis and for other bishops who are also spreading confusion in the church and so on. So we have not to shut ourselves in anger. So no, I will not do nothing with this Pope. I have to do nothing with this bishop. No, this is not the attitude of a Catholic. It's an attitude of a sectarian, ultimately. And we have to avoid these temptations. Continue, even when in some cases we say we cannot obey now to the Pope because he did these commands or orders which are evidently undermining the faith or taking us away the treasure of the liturgy, which is the liturgy of the entire church, not of him, of our fathers, of our saints. So we have the right to this. And then in these cases, even if we would formally disobey, we will obey the entire church of all the times. And we will even do with such a apparently formal disobedience an honor to the Holy See, that we were kept the treasures of liturgy, which is a treasure of the Holy See, but temporarily limited or discriminated by those who currently occupy high offices in the Holy See. So we have to see the Holy See is greater than only a single Pope. And we have to also, all this is for the honor of the Holy See and ultimately also for the love of the Pope. Because when one day he will appear before the judgment of God, and God will say, oh, because you gave these orders, you damaged the spiritual good of the church, the Lord will say to the Pope, because you prohibited or marginalized and discriminalized the holy liturgy of the saints of all the ages, these treasures. This is your responsibility. And the church lost, in this case, many graces because you locked down the liturgy of the ages of the saints. And then the Lord will show him, but during your pontificate there were groups, priests, who did not obey you to collaborate with this marginalizing of the liturgy, and they nevertheless continued to celebrate the liturgy, and therefore your guilt can be a little bit diminished, because in your pontificate there was still places where the liturgy of all ages was celebrated. So it's only an imagination of me. And therefore we will say to the Pope, Holy Father, even if we are disobeying you, we are doing this because of love for you, for the Holy See, for the liturgy of all saints, and this will be for you in the hour of your judgment a consolation, because we did not collaborate with your harmful orders.
Your Excellency, that was beautifully stated, and I was thinking about all the people that we hear from day to day, people around the world who watch Remnant TV or read our newspaper. And what you just said, I'd like to take that, clip that, and send it to priests who are wondering what they should do under Traditionis Custodes, because I think it's very important for the priests and bishops to really think about the lay position right now. It's so disheartening, because not only are they losing their Latin Mass, I'm talking about mothers and fathers with 7, 8, 9, 10 little children, but they've been driving for 45 minutes, 50 minutes, an hour every Sunday, every week for 25 years to try to raise their families and generations. And now even that far distant Mass is being taken away by the Pope for no apparent reason that makes any sense to them. So the priests that have the opportunity to continue to offer the traditional Latin Mass to these beautiful Catholics who are simply trying to remain faithful, I think through disobedience will help them stay in the church.
Exactly. And in these Masses, even if they are formally not approved, always, this is important, to pray for the Pope Francis, to pray for the bishop of that diocese, even loud, is loud voice, that you will see we are not schismatic, we are not a new sect or so, and praying for the Pope. And so we love him, but we cannot temporarily follow his damaging, harming orders. And these priests have to have a superior. It's very important. They cannot be their own pope or their own bishop. This is not Catholic, simply not Catholic. And this will, by time, degenerate this priest in a kind of guru. And we have a lot of examples today also, unfortunately, in the traditional world also. Priests who are completely independent. This cannot be. This is contrary to the Catholic spirit. A priest cannot be independent. He has to have a superior.
And if he doesn't, what should he do?
He has to seek a superior.
Okay.
It cannot be his own. This is not Catholic. Then he has to go to a community or to Society of Pius X to affiliate, to have at least a superior, whom he has to give account. A priest has to have a superior. Otherwise, he starts to develop his own, that he is a pope, he is a bishop, he is all. And this is so dangerous. So, or seek, of course, a community which is approved, and even if it should be the Society of Pius X, which is partly approved by the Holy See, through the concessions which the Holy Father gave them. But then there is a structure, there is an obedience, there is a subordination. Or in very rare cases, maybe a retired bishop, a Catholic retired bishop who has still faculties, even so he is retired, he is in good stand, and he can submit him to this bishop to receive from him orders and to give account in a discreet and maybe temporal manner until the Holy See will have again those in the Holy See who will promote and protect the holy tradition.
So it's obviously very important for us to, not unlike the Christians in the catacombs of old, come together and have very serious conversations, because we are in a state of emergency now, along the lines of what you just said. How are we going to proceed? The conversation, the coming together of the priests and bishops that we have to work this out is extremely important right now. As you just said, we need to have those conversations rather than just go rogue and react and end up in a problematic situation. I know you've got a busy schedule, but I want to. Last year, I think I ended by asking you something about the angels, because obviously the angelic friends are so important during this dark time. And I wonder if you could say something. It just strikes me that Our Lady would be, obviously she's the go-to person, intercessory anyway, but she understands, as a human like us, what it was like to lose Jesus Christ to death on the cross, and also to lose Peter. You know, during that period when she suddenly realized that even Peter, even his number one apostle, had betrayed her son before he died on the cross, and that her son knew of that betrayal, must have wounded her heart a great deal. Must have been a very difficult thing for her. Is there something that we can glean from what Our Lady experienced in that regard for how we need to deal with the fact that we're losing the Mass and we're losing Peter for a time?
It's a very good example you mentioned, yes, very deep. And I think we have to ask Our Lady that to have her attitude, not to despair. When she saw the betrayal of Peter, imagine, and Peter abandoned the cross, only John remained, one apostle, and all the apostles fled. And she continued loving the apostles. She did not react in anger against them. She continued to pray for them. And then she implored on the Pentecost, with her Immaculate Heart, the coming down of the Holy Spirit upon the apostles. She was there. And this is our attitude. We have to pray for them, to love them, even if they are betrayers, to make reparation. And you mentioned the angels. We are today in a great fight, war, spiritual war, between the evil spirits and the good spirits, the angels, between the truth and the heresy, the error, between the holiness and the sins and the vices, between the sacredness of the liturgy and the desacralizations and blasphemies in the liturgy. This is a contrast, this is a fight. And in this fight, of course, we have to invoke the holy angels as the companions, our co-fighters, co-adorers, and they want to help us. So we have to build a spiritual army together with the holy angels, Saint Michael the Archangel, and to invoke them to expel the evil spirits or the influence of the evil spirits in our communities, in the church, from the Holy See, from the chanceries and so on. We have to invoke them to send the angels, because we are one family. The many saints, they had this attitude and this practice to send the guardian angels to another angel, guardian angel. Saint Padre Pio, he oftentimes made these. Send his holy angel to the other holy angel for this person who should do some important work. So we can send our holy angels to the guardian angel of the Pope, of the Bishop, to strengthen him, that the guardian angel of the Pope may better influence, that the Pope may be open and hear the voice of his guardian angel, of his guardian angels. I think that the popes receive special angels still, besides of their own guardian angel, and the bishops also. So we have to collaborate. We make a strategy with the holy angels. Today, in the world, in the world and inside the church, within the church, the evil forces, they are masters of strategy. And we have also to make strategies, but holy strategies, not evil strategies. So we have to send the angels and invoke them and make these strategies with our holy patrons, which we have. And God will, with these holy protectors and helpers, intervene. And the time will come. We have to simply to trust and to do what we can, even if we are sowing in tears in the field, the seeds. God will give us again a harvest in His time. What we shall do, what we can, to remain faithful to the Catholic faith, to live a virtuous life, with charity always, to protect the faith, to be defenders of the faith, to be apologetics also. This is our mission. So, to increase our mission as a militant church, our conscience, and that we are together a great family, and to be always conscious and convicted that we are the winners. The Catholic faith will win. Also this tremendous, extraordinary crisis of the papacy in our day will win.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency. I conclude this interview. I think this might be the fourth or fifth interview that we've done, by confessing to you that as a layman and looking what's happening to the church, giving way to anger is very, very easy, and I'm very susceptible to that. So I think there's a lot of people out there who are so frustrated and so disheartened by what's happening at the highest levels of the church. And I appreciate your constant guidance and example on how we need to keep, like as you say, make sure the strategy the resistance, the admonishment, whatever you want to call it, bears good fruit. And I think we all need to have that driven home, because we can get angry and just fly off the handle and do damage to the cause of Christ. And I truly appreciate you coming to the Catholic Identity Conference to remind us how to fight as warriors, loyal opposition, but warriors of Jesus Christ.
So may God bless you and all your friends and all who are with a sincere heart and a loving heart doing the work contribution for the true renewal of the Church, of our Holy Mother Church.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency.
You're welcome.